You're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it is America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm Ashley Hardgrave, joined this week by Oliver Camacho, Weston Williams, and Matt Cummings. All right, it's Halloween, and we're here to warn you about opera characters you don't want to be alone with in the woods. And wouldn't you know it, none of them are bears. Plus, we have a lot of listener mail this week, so we are going to do something extra horrifying and skip the 2-minute drill. Ooh! Make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Spookify. Oliver, did you write this? Click follow on the Apple with a hidden razor blade in its podcast and hit the cross sign. Or you can send us a voice memo or use Dolores Umbridge's blood quill to email us your hot takes at mailbag@operaboxscore.com, or just record your thoughts by using the You Got Something to Say tab on our website. That is at operaboxscore.com. However you contribute, you will get the OBS beer coaster carved from a tombstone and a rusty OBS lapel pin that will pierce the skin when you wear it, and a #1 OBS fan real human finger for entertainment purposes only, just for sharing your own hot take. Oliver, how are you, my dear?
I'm so horrified by all of the spooky merch that our listeners will receive when they send us their listener mailbag. And we've got a lot to cover today. And I'm sure you want to talk to Matt. Matt, hello.
Hello. Something wicked this way comes, and it's new merchandise or not new, depending on when you get it.
It's all spooky indeed. And hello, I greet you from the very spooky city of London, Ontario, Canada.
That's not where London's supposed to be.
Ooh, where I learned that there is a junior hockey league team for the Canadian Hockey League, the London Knights, and they had a game this evening while I was coming back from a work event, which meant I had to brave the spooky, spooky traffic of a mid-sized Canadian city.
Well, this week we're going to do something a little bit different. Since we have so much mailbag and so much spooktacular to get through, we're going to alternate between listener mailbags and spooktacular segments. And we'll start with a report from our friend PJ.
Yeah, you got something to say? Then yeah, all right, you can say something. This is Listener Mailbag.
Hello, Opera Box Score. It's PJ. I'm here at the Met at intermission at Il Trovatore. This is the dress rehearsal. We're not quite ready, as you can see from the various lighting effects that they're playing with on stage, but it's really fun to be here on a Wednesday morning to see what they're getting ready. They're cooking up for us for Saturday. It will be the debut of Michael Fabiano in the role of Manrico. He's not sung this role before. We also have Jamie Barton, wow, Rachel Willis Sorensen, Brianna Hunter, and Ryan Speedo Green. Really thrilling to see all these wonderful singers on stage. As I mentioned, they're working diligently on the production. They're not quite there. And Brianna Hunter is not feeling great. They warned us that she might not be singing in full voice as she's got a little bit of a cold. She's recovering from that. I had a big week, in fact. More opera. We had our Giulio Gari Winners Concert on Sunday at this lovely church in New York, where we honored Michael Fabiano, a past winner. So it was fun to see him there and hang out a little bit, and now to see him on stage and a debut for him. We also had Catherine Malfitano. We honored her, and she talked about City Opera, her career there, her career as a teacher, et cetera, et cetera. So that was fun. I'll tell you what, she did not want to leave that stage. It was a good 15 minutes of conversation that we all enjoyed in the middle of our concert. We featured Le Bou, and we had Esther Tonea, and we had Minky Hong, a bunch of lovely, lovely singers on stage that kind of capped off our season for 2024. This is PJ from the Met. Report back to you soon.
So I thought this week we would approach the spooktacular in a slightly different way and talk about characters in operas that are evil and spooky, characters that we don't want to see in the woods alone. And of course, the election is on my mind, and I'm thinking about people in power and people who abuse power. And it got me thinking about Olin Blitch in Carlisle Floyd's Susanna. And I think we all recognize his character, somebody who weaponizes their morality, who can incite a mob. I don't want to slander any particular one of our listeners, but there's this idea that Obama came up with about people who cling to their guns or cling to their religion. And we have both in Carlisle Floyd, Susanna. Matt, before we listen to a little bit of the revival scene, can you tell us about where the revival scene fits in this opera and how we're introduced to Olin Blitch?
So Olin Blitch shows up at the very top of the opera at a square dance, and he first is a presence who more or less ingratiates himself with the community, and it's not quite until you get to the beginning of Act 2 when you see everyone at church, and as the service goes on, it's like the lights go down and the red lights behind him come up, and it's like you're slowly morphing into this really, really hellish picture of this very, zealous community where the church is at the center of everything, and the community is extremely tightly knit and has already ostracized Susanna. And as the church service goes on, and he's, imploring her to repent for something that she didn't do, it gets darker and darker and more threatening and almost violent.
Well, here is a performance from the 1994 Richard Tucker Gala. It's Samuel Ramey. We'll just hear a little bit of the revival scene from that live performance.
I'm fixin' to tell you about a feller I knowed what was young and smart and rich, except he never put much thought on his whole or soul or where he'd spend eternity. One time when I was preaching in Texas, I was called to his home one night, and there he lay all sweating, with his eyes all staring with pride. He grabbed me by the hand and said, "They tell me I'm a dying man, and I might not get through the night. Seems like my poor heart's done run down too soon, and I want to make everything right. I ain't been such a bad life. I ain't drank, no smoke, no swore, but I'm all afraid of dying. I'm sure there's something more."
Sounding like $1,000,000, Samuel Ramey in 1994.
And not an easy scene to sing.
Yeah.
Heavens no.
And of course, because these are people that we see in real day life, he ends up being a hypocrite. And I have this friend who's super political, and she posts on Facebook, because I'm that age where I go to Facebook first. She posts on Facebook maybe 20 times a day, if not more. And it's always political stuff. But she always finds these reports of, Christian leaders or police officers or somebody, who's in power, who ends up abusing their power and doing a sexual crime against a juvenile or something like that, and that's Olin Blitch right there for you. Here he is, inciting a mob to, turn their backs on poor Susanna and her brother. And what does he do but find her alone? And, apparently he's trying to save her, but he finds her vulnerable. And this is what that sounds like when Olin Blitch can't help himself.
I'm a lonely man, Susanna, and made out of flesh and blood and bone, and I need somebody I can love like other folks, 'cause it's a lonesome work I do. Will your brother be home tonight? Let's go inside.
I'm so tired. I just can't find no more.
That was Samuel Ramey once again from the studio recording, which was led by Kent Nagano from Opera de Lyon. So that's my scary guy, Olin Blitch. We're now going to move into another listener mailbag. This one from our friend Zara in New York.
Hey, Operabox Score fans. You may recall a delightful interview from the September 26th episode with Vanessa Becerra and a brief discussion of singers of Hispanic and Latino or Latina heritage. When I heard the words Mexican mezzos step up during that segment, I could hardly wait to introduce you to a fantastic Mexican mezzo-soprano working here in New York City, Guadalupe Peraza. She has been an opera competition winner, oratorio soloist, and recitalist here and in Mexico City, and has won scholarships and grants from the Mexican Fine Arts Institute, the Mexican National Institute for Culture and the Arts, and the New York State Council on the Arts. But what you're going to hear about in this mini interview is her work as founder and artistic director of Mexamorphosis, a project that brings together top-level musicians from all over the world to celebrate musical diversity and freedom of expression, to challenge stereotypes and generic boundaries, and to foster creativity and mutual learning. Mexamorphosis concerts bring together virtuosic soloists and multi-instrumentalists for international collaborations. So you might hear Baroque laments that make use of new instrumentation or evolve into dances and improvisation. At these concerts, you get a sense of the ways that Mexamorphosis challenges conventions around what it means for music to be classical, or for an audience to experience classical music. And you feel an inclusive, celebratory vibe that enlivens these formal spaces and really speaks to Guadalupe's mission and to who she is as a musician. You can find out more about Mexamorphosis at mexamorphosis.org. Support this work by following Mexamorphosis on Instagram, or attend their upcoming concert at the Church of St. Ignatius Loyola in New York City on November 7th. But now let me introduce the wonderful mezzo-soprano and artistic director, Guadalupe Peraza.
I was born in Mexico City, and it has been a privilege to work here for many years now. No matter how many years I live abroad, I will always be Mexican and have that sort of like cultural part of me, even though I'm learning a lot here from many other people from different countries and different cultures, which I think is a fantastic part of being in New York.
You have your own group, Mexamorphosis, and I'd love to hear about how you got the idea to start that group, some of the musicians you work with, and what some of the goals are with that.
We're bringing together people from not only many parts of the world and many different cultural backgrounds, but also different musical backgrounds and styles that all have something in common. We all have a connecting point, and some of them come from Mali, like West Africa, from Mali, from Guinea. People come from Mexico, actually, all the way from Mexico, just to do this, from Veracruz, who are like specialists in music styles that are not very well known around the world. I think probably many cultures have been stereotyped by the media, and the music that is known as Mexican music is not even a small percentage of the richness of what we have there and the connections that we have. But also, this is about the collective. We are coming together in collective creativity. We are not a group. We are not a band. We rotate guests. Everybody there not only is a phenomenal musician, artist, even dancers. They have many different skills as artists, but also they have brilliant minds. It's, for me, a learning process. And also they learn from each other. Some of them have never been exposed to the son jarocho music from Mexico, even huapango, some styles that are not very well known. That is incredibly virtuosistic, and very elaborate. And so they can learn from each other's techniques, ways of approaching music. And a lot of the repertoire that I have been programming now, I've been learning from them, because it comes from millennial traditions that they learn since they're born. A lot of things that, I bring repertoire to the table, but I also have learned a lot of this music from scratch that I also wasn't exposed to it before. So this is a very rich, also educational sort of project.
Sure.
While hopefully fun. We try to make it as interactive as possible, no matter where people come from, what their background, what their age. We're doing this together, and this is about inclusivity, both in the side of the artist and also the side of the audience, and there's sort of like no line in between. But since you guys did mention Mexican mezzos, I have to say that we are going to be joined by another Mexican mezzo-soprano who is wonderful, and her name is Michelle Claverie, and she's a wonderful opera singer who also can do many different music styles. So there are 2 Mexican mezzos in this project, and you're welcome to come. I hope to see you there. Join us for the fandango, for the jam session that we have at the end. Join us for wine, for food, for fun, for music, for community.
Guadalupe, thank you so much.
So much of what I find interesting about Halloween is about this, collision between these old pagan traditions and the modern day. And actually, people have been, fascinated by that collision of old and new for centuries, from all the way back from what we consider old was then new. And one example of that is Lohengrin, which is like this crazy Russian nesting doll of Wagner operas, in that the title character is the son of Parsifal. Yes, that Parsifal from the other one. And it's based on an epic that was written by the character Wolfram from Eschenbach, from Tannhäuser, the real person, who is also a character in a different Wagner opera. However, by far the most interesting character in that opera is Ortrud, who does not exist in the source material. She was invented by Wagner, and she really is like all of the power behind the plot. So she is married to the Count Telramund, who was the guardian of the Duke, and was supposed to be He was originally supposed to marry Elsa, but after Elsa's brother disappeared, he ditched her and married Ortrud instead to, vie to become the new Duke of Brabant. And in doing this, they trigger a trial by combat because they accuse Elsa of having killed her brother. And Lohengrin and Beholdengrin, there comes a knight to defend her honor in a boat driven by a swan. Lohengrin wins. The Telramunds are banished, act break. Now, this whole time, Ortrud has just been on stage, almost completely silent. She speaks 2 times in Act 1. But in Act 2, we find out what's really been going on here, and where the power is. So it turns out that she is not just anybody, but she's a pagan witch, and she's the descendant of the last, pre-Christian ruler of the Frisians. And she's really been scheming this whole time to put herself into power again. And scheme she does. So she goes to Elsa and she get to plant the seeds that maybe she shouldn't be trusting this knight. And this manipulation scene is just amazing because she comes on and she's so plaintive and so sad. And then the second that Elsa's out of earshot, she swings her cape around and cackles and sings this big prayer to Wotan and Freya. More Easter eggs from other Wagner operas. So let's hear, this is an extremely iconic moment in Lohengrin, and let's hear one of the best to ever do it, Leni Rieseneck from Berlin in 1984. That performance was led by Heinrich Hollreiser. And the second that Elsa comes down after this, she's just like, Bestie, I just want you to be happy. What are you talking about?
I like this journey for you.
So, you know, it comes to the wedding scene, and Ortrud and Telramund burst in the middle of the procession like the villains from the Princess Diaries. And Ortrud is like, I've had enough. I pretended to like you for 1 hour. That is too much. I can't take it anymore. I'm gonna turn this crowd against you all. And it unfortunately doesn't work, and they get banished again. Act break.
Not very mindful, not very demure.
No, certainly not. But it did, unfortunately, for some, work. Because Elsa just can't help herself and has to ask the knight his name, which, spoiler alert, it's Lohengrin. And just as he's about to leave, Ortrud runs back on stage again to say, actually, it was I who set this whole thing into motion by getting rid of Elsa's brother, by turning him into the swan that's pulling the boat right over there, and now I've won. But unfortunately, she doesn't wait for Lohengrin to leave before she makes this big pronouncement, and so he turns the swan back into a human, and she is more or less, she sinks down to the ground, defeated. Let's hear one of the more modern Ortruds, Waltraud Meyer, who performed this role in Bayreuth in 2018. So Ortrud is totally just like the embodiment of scorned vengeance, and she feels so much entitlement to rule the Brabant and will stop at nothing to get what's hers. And she does it, she's a master manipulator and uses other people as pawns to play the long game. And it's really interesting because, like, in the story, Ortrud is this backward-looking figure. You know, she prays to the Old Norse gods. She she's like very doubtful of all this Christianity stuff, but musically, like she kind of is looking forward to where Wagner would end up going with The Ring. Her music is very stormy and very declamatory. She does a lot of shrieking in addition to all of this sweet talking. And she ultimately is her own undoing, because if she had just waited for Lohengrin to leave, like he said he had to, she might have ended up the new Duchess of Brabant.
I mean, if I had $1 for every time that happened to me.
Every time you were like, it was I who turned the Duke into a swan.
Yes, I am often accused of not being very mindful or demure, so this all checks out.
Hello, Opera Box Score. It's PJ with a report from someone else. This is Jesse and Maxine. They had just seen an opera in Oslo, Norway, called Die Tjardash Fursten by Emmerich Kallman. And they have a report both about the Oslo Opera House and this lovely operetta that they saw.
This is Maxine Ewing and Jesse Ewing, and we're here in Oslo, Norway. In Oslo, Norway. And last night, right? Yeah. Last night we went to the Oslo Opera House. Yes. We learned some interesting things. We learned, firstly, that the Oslo Opera was built with, is it Italian marble?
Carrara marble.
Yeah, and it was built to be shaped like, quiz time, an iceberg. It is very beautiful. It's right on the water and the sort of like bay area.
A fjord.
A fjord. Apologies. A fjord. And the inside, do you remember what the
Norwegian oak.
And apparently that makes it acoustically one of the best, if not the best, opera house. The theater was smaller than the Met. It was like 3 floors, I think. Yeah. Beautiful big red curtain. Big, kind of like white-ish light on the top, which was,
Maxine did not care for the white light.
I did not care for the white, massive chandelier. It wasn't like that sort of like dim, warm feeling of the Met. And you can also know that Norwegians were upset when it was being built because they wanted it to be built out of Norwegian granite, which is a local resource, but the architect who was Norwegian wanted it to be out of the lighter colored marble. And you can also say that it was 7% of the national GDP budget. I don't know what that would be, but it was 7. It cost 7% of Norway's money.
Outrageous.
Yeah. And that wasn't the thing that people were pissed about. People were pissed about the fact that it was built with granite. It wasn't built with granite. It was built with Italian marble. But the acoustic nature of the opera house is all to the credit of what we think might be oak. Norwegian oak. So what I understood is that it's actually like an old story from the 1800s. But I'm guessing they modernized it. Yes. It was like a modernized version. It was an operetta, so there was speaking as well. It was this odd story about a woman and a man, and they're in love, but the guy's a rich man and she's a cabaret singer, and they want to get married, but he'll be disinherited if he does.
But the she is not a she.
Maybe.
The she is probably a he.
We weren't sure. Was that confirmed?
I thought that was part of the storyline.
We think they modernized it.
I think that it becomes an opera of acceptance and finding space in your heart for everyone.
It might have I think you're probably right. I think we think it was modernized for like just a modern version of this old story.
Sold out.
Yeah, it was sold. That's the thing that's interesting. It was an operetta. It wasn't a full opera. It was a modernized version that was definitely dealing with like gender and sexuality, and it was totally sold out.
Yeah. It was like 3 hours long.
But it was a really fun experience.
Oh, everyone was in sneakers?
It was so much more casual than the Metropolitan Opera House. People were tastefully dressed, but, more casual.
I would say all of Oslo this weekend was super casual.
I would agree. It's more casual, but no one was wearing sweatpants. It's like everyone was wearing nice sneakers and jeans and nice sweaters, but not like dressed to the nines like in New York City. But no one was dressing worse than sneakers and jeans. Okay, that's your report.
Apologies to my fellow co-hosts for not being there tonight. I thought I would contribute something that I've talked about a little bit before, but I think is one of the true great examples of a scary villain in opera history. This is from the 2012 opera by George Benjamin, the British composer, Written on Skin. The librettist is Martin Crimp. Now, I'm on record here saying that this is one of the best operas of the 21st century so far. If you somehow have not sat down and heard it or watched the Aix-en-Provence DVD, it is truly extraordinary. It stars Christopher Purvis and Bejun Mehta and friend of the show Barbara Hannigan. This is truly a gorgeous opera in a lot of ways. It has use of the glass harmonica, or at least the crystal glasses. I don't know if it's technically a glass harmonica, but that sound, viola da gamba. It is arranged in a very sort of soundscapey way. It deliberately eschews leitmotif in favor of exploring the character of Agnes, played by Barbara Hannigan in the original Aix-en-Provence production, and creates just a feeling unlike really any other opera I had seen before. And really the only sort of precedents and antecedents are from George Benjamin himself. So let's talk about who I think is one of the great villains of opera history, in relatively recent opera history. That is, of course, the Protector in this production played by Christopher Purvis. This is a disgusting person in a lot of fundamental ways. He, more than really any other character I can think of outside of a high 19th century romantic opera, exemplifies the concept of the toxic masculine man. He is a wealthy landowner and has a great deal of wealth, but this is the Middle Ages, where that gets you quite a lot of power. He uses that money and power in the opera to commission a book with sort of illuminations in the medieval style. This is based on a story, I believe, from the 13th century. And he finds a boy who is able to draw and create this for him. And he sort of sets out his character and what makes him tick in sort of his opening speech to this boy, describing how he thinks about himself, how he wants himself portrayed in the illustrations, how he wants his land and his wife, Agnes, to be portrayed. You understand very quickly that this is a man who is completely and unrepentantly the master of his domain, whether or not that is a humane thing to be or not.
Stand here, look, my house is perfect. A tonight stars wheel over my vines according to the strict mechanism of the world. And by day, says the Protector, fruit trees, blue heads of iris, pink cups of eglantine turn to the sun. I own the fields. I own everyone in them. Every beech, each visible oak is as much my property as my dog, my millstream, or my wife's body. A still and obedient body is my property.
See how he really reduces Agnes, his wife, to a body, to bone and tissue, and he has never once in his life been challenged in this. He has always been wealthy, he's always been a man, he's always been the person on top. At the very beginning of the opera, the angels who sort of stand in for other characters in the opera describe him explicitly as addicted to purity and violence, which is a great line from Martin Crimp. And you can hear it in how he's portrayed. I will also say, you might have heard in that clip, Martin Krimp did a very interesting thing where the characters speak in third person about themselves, sort of creating this objective reality to who they are. They don't seem to be living and breathing, except for Agnes at times, because they are stuck in their ways, and not just in their ways, but in their time and in their place. And that is a really interesting way to sort of magnify the threat of someone like the Protector, who of course is not really protector of Agnes at all. He considers Agnes, his wife, to be his property. When he wants sex from her, he gets sex from her. When he wants her to, do what he wants, she does it, or else. And of course, the linchpin of this opera, if you've never seen it, is that Agnes sees the boy who is making this beautiful gilded illustration for the Protector, has an affair with him, and he finds out about it, is not pleased. He has his own conflicted sexual feelings about the boy. In a fit of jealousy off screen, he kills the boy. But then we have one of the most horrifying moments in opera, this side of the one Sancta Susanna, where everyone was bleeding and peeing on command that we talked about the other week. And he basically forces Agnes, he provides her with some food, as a protector, as a husband would do in the medieval period. He provides her with some food, and he makes her eat it. And as she eats it, he asks her, how does it taste? And with growing horror, you in the audience and Agnes realize that it is the boy's heart who the Protector has cut out and is forcing her to eat. And in this Aix-en-Provence production that we're taking these clips from, it is a very gross looking gray squiggly prop that looks very heart-like indeed. It really sticks with you, and not just because of the gore and the Halloweeny nature of it, but because it is so real, even though it is heightened. This is a mindset that is present all across the world to some degree. This idea of one gender being better than the other and expecting a certain amount of deference. And I think the music, in addition to the immediate horrific gore and Agnes standing up for herself and eating the heart anyway, is truly a remarkable moment in the history of opera. Let's take a listen, and then we'll move on to something maybe a little bit less gross.
How does it taste, says the man.
Greetings, Opera Box Score. This is Donald reporting from New York. Yesterday evening was the Richard Tucker Music Foundation Gala 2024. This was the second year in a row that they did not have an orchestra. Usually it's with the Met Orchestra. The pianists were Brian Wayghorn and Harold Watkins of the Met musical staff. Singers, Jamie Barton, Janae Bridges, Michael Fabiano, Ryan Speedo Green, Quinn Kelsey, Anthony Leone, Nadine Sierra, Elena Villalone, Rachel Willis Sorensen, and as a surprise, we got Angel Blue, who sang America the Beautiful a cappella. She sang very beautifully. I'm not necessarily her biggest fan, but she did sing well, and she does have a beautiful voice. It opened with the always wonderful Nadine Sierra singing Mi Chiamano Mimi. She also partnered Quinn Kelsey later on in the Rigoletto di Tutte le Feste and the duet. And she did a great encore with Anthony Roth Costanzo, but we'll get to that later. Jamie Barton sang the witch's aria from Hansel und Gretel, and she was having a ball. It was a lot of fun. Rachel Willis Sorensen sang Costa Diva, sang it very well. It is a big, beautiful voice. Michael Fabiano, coming off of his first Manrico at the Met and an injury also, he fell backstage right after the Di Quella Pira and injured his ankle. He could barely walk. He came out and he sang Duparc's Fidele. Elena Villalone sang the Gavotte from Manon. The audience kept applauding every time the music stopped. It's almost like they didn't know the music. There were 4 verses to the Gavotte. Every time they started applauding, she had to start again. Anyway, it was very good, beautiful performance. Anthony Roth Costanza came out and did the Aure de per Pietà from Giulio Cesare. Janae Bridges did the O Malio Immortelle from Sappho, Gounod. New tenor Anthony Leone sang Una furtiva lagrima from L'Elisir d'Amore. He sang well. He's very musical. He's a good singer. He's got a good top. To me, it's not a special voice, but he's a good singer. Ryan Speedo Green sang a very suave De Vieni alla Finestra from Don Giovanni. Rachel Willis Sorensen and Jamie Barton sang the Mira o Norma. For me, the 2 best were Anthony Roth Costanzo and Nadine Sierra. During the summer, he did a show at the Little Island, which is a pier in Manhattan. And he did all four major roles in Don Giovanni. And he came out and he says, well, I guess you all want to know what I sound like if I sang like a man. So he did the Susanna and Count duet. And Susanna, he would be on one side of the piano. Then he'd pirouette around to the other side for the Count, and pirouette back for Susanna. It was a lot of fun. Very end, he and Nadine sang I Got Rhythm. When they finished up, he jumped up into her arms like a little baby. She was holding him there. And it was really kind of cute because she's a big girl. She's about 6 feet tall. And he's a little guy. He's about 5'4", 5'5". So it was cute. Anyway, that was the Richard Tucker concert. It was everybody had a good time. It was not quite a sold-out house, which is unusual. Usually the Tucker Foundation sells out, but I guess it's a sign of the times.
Leave it to me to bring one of the newer pieces of the operatic zeitgeist to us for this spooktacular. My character that is, to me, fully terrifying is Jack Torrance from The Shining, because The Shining. So The Shining is an opera that premiered in 2016. It's from the team of Paul Moravec, the composer, and Mark Campbell, the librettist. It was part of originally Minnesota Opera's New Works initiative, but since then it's been performed at a lot of houses across the country: Colorado, Kansas City, Portland, Atlanta. Kansas City actually just released a recording of The Shining this year. We will talk about that shortly. So the opera The Shining was deliberately designed to be more aligned with the 1977 Stephen King novel than it was the 1980 Stanley Kubrick film. So in terms of source material, it is way more novel than film.
Which means it doesn't have any of the iconic moments that you think of as coming from The Shining.
Precisely. So like if you're thinking about Jack Nicholson and the amazing Shelley Duvall, R.I.P., as great as they are, you're going to need to put those away. The characters of Jack and his wife in this are much more earnest. They're much more steadfast. They don't devolve into terrifying places until a little bit later on, sort of in the narrative. The book itself, if you've actually read the novel, it's pretty operatic. It's got its own series of like mad scenes as Jack devolves further and further into his own past and his addiction, the haunting and the lore of the Overlook Hotel, which of course, as we all know, is the true villain of this piece. Because it's newer, I want to talk a little bit about some of the different musical moments. The score is pretty tonal and it's honestly pretty romantic. It's got some really super cool standout scenes. When you hear people talk about the things they remember and enjoy the most about this musically, they speak a lot about the ball scene because it's very, very jazzy with, as soon as it's, in your 1940s jazz brain, all of a sudden there's some sourness that comes in to let you know that something's amiss. He's devolving into insanity. You're going to find that out shortly. What about this is scary? Well, like I said, it's The Shining. The man is haunted by his past. He is doomed by his future, and he's in this spooky hotel that was supposed to save his family, but almost kills them, and eventually does kill him. Sorry if I'm spoiling an almost 50-year-old novel for you. He is singing, when we're looking at this scene that I actually want to share with you guys in terms of a clip. This is, it's She Creeps, which is the opening of Act 2. And so this is one of Jack's arias. He's singing about the basement boiler of the hotel. So again, if you're not familiar with the concept of The Shining, Jack Torrance and his family have been brought on. Jack has been, tasked with being the caretaker of this old hotel in rural Colorado and all of the different tasks that come with it. One of them is the boiler that's in the basement of the hotel. And so this piece is called She Creeps. She meaning the boiler. And it creeps because everything about this piece is incredibly creepy. And the text is, she creeps. You got to empty her twice a day. And if and you don't, you and your family will be blown sky high. And funnily enough, the piece that I'm playing for you, this is actually the second time, the twice of the day, that we actually see him do this and work with the boiler. So this is the very opening of Act 2. So Jack has already begun to devolve. He's already sort of started to slip into his own insanity. He's already lost it once in Act 1. So we are watching him process that. We're watching him devolve further. In just a few scenes, he's going to fully lose his grip on reality, give into those demons of his past and into the spirits of the hotel. So all of that is, yes, relatively scary. And if that's not scary, the high B flat on the word high is something that will scare the crap out of most baritones. So at any rate, I'd like to share with you now, again, the opening of Act 2, She Creeps. This is the Lyric Opera of Kansas City recording that came out earlier this year. Edward Parks singing the role of Jack, and Gerard Schwartz is conducting.
Twice a day. If then you don't, you and your family will be blown sky high. Maybe I should let it go. Maybe let it go. I'll go with it. Why the hell not?
Good call. Bad call. On Opera Box Score.
All right, it's time to lower this episode into the grave. Do you like my spooky voices? We are going to go to good call, bad call, which is how we end every episode. Oliver Camacho, you got a call for us this week.
Well, earlier today, we learned that Terry Garr died actually just hours ago. So that's a bad call. But I have another sort of good call that's about a bad call. There's an article in, what is this, MSN.com .com.
The Microsoft Network, yes.
Yeah. And it's a really, I really enjoyed reading this. It's about somebody who is told that their natural singing voice is more beautiful than their operatic singing voice. Like, oh, why don't you sing like that all the time? Has that ever happened to you where somebody's heard you sing like maybe pop or like with opera vibrato, like maybe just something less operatic? And it's like, oh, wow, I didn't know your voice was blah, you know? And it's just like, it's so insulting. And that has certainly happened to me before. And I just wanted to shout out this article, which we will link to our website. The article is called "The Worst Insult I Ever Heard as an Opera Singer."
Matt Cummings.
I will not be saying that about Lisette Oropesa, whose new album I started listening to while I was prepping this episode. She released a Zarzuela album this week called Mis Amores Son Las Flores, with music from Spain and Cuba, I believe I read. I'm only a couple tracks into it, but she sounds fantastic. And it's really a great chance to get to know music that I've really never listened to before. So I recommend it already.
Amazing. And this week I'm actually going to have 2 calls. Why? Because I'm the host and I do what I want. All right. So officially, my main good call this week is a congratulations to Washington National Opera for opening their season with an incredible production of Fidelio. Thank you so much for having us. We will have a field report on that in a week when we don't have 37,000 mailbags, but also keep your mailbags coming. We love them. So congratulations to friend of the show, Sinead Campbell-Wallace, who crushed it, to Jemez McCorkle and Denise freaking Graves as the Prime Minister. It was extraordinary. She was incredible. I might have cried. So that's sort of official good call number 1. Good call number 2 is Billy the Symphonic Dog on TikTok getting a chance to go and see his first orchestra rehearsal ever. So Billy is a dog on TikTok, and he is fascinated with and loves orchestral instruments. So people come into his parents' home to like play and rehearse, and he just sits next to them and is just so enthralled and loves it so much. So the Vancouver, Metropolitan Orchestra brought Billy, the talking puppy, into their rehearsal when they were rehearsing the first movement of Schumann's Symphony No. 4 in D minor. And you guys, Billy wore a bow tie because it was the symphony. At any rate, we will put that link somewhere. And if you can't find it, DM me and we'll just watch it and cry together. So at any rate, congratulations to Billy the Symphonic Dog for getting his first orchestra rehearsal. That is it for this week's edition of America's Talk Radio Show about opera. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. You're going to get your voice heard, and you're going to find links to stuff that we've talked about at our website. That is going to be operaboxscore.com. That is also where you can put your money where our mouths are. Spookily this week, you're going to give back to OBS using the Support the Team tab. Your announcer is Norm Waddell. Your creative consultant is Oliver Camacho, and your audio editor is Weston Williams. The executive producer of OBS is George Cedarquist. For co-host Matt Cummings and our field contributors PJ, Donald, Zara, Jesse, and Maxine, thank you all. I am Ashley Hardgrave, asking you to continue the conversation about opera and check your voter registration, because nothing is scarier than not participating in November. Ooh. We are back with an all-new show next week when Kenneth Kellogg takes a free throw on the role of the father in Janine Tuzori's Blue. Plus, you'll get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more shrieking and sweet talking. Join us.